Before a man goes bankrupt, something spiritual breaks first. Almost no one heeds this warning, and when they do, they've already lost money, respect, and their destiny. There is a spiritual warning, a silent ancient sign, in Hebrew, that appears in a man's life before bankruptcy, before the business collapses, before the marriage crumbles, before dignity is stripped away. The banks don't see that signal. The accountants don't see that signal. The lawyers don't see that sign. But an elderly billionaire rabbi, with his mind on the stock market and his heart on the Torah, can see it clearly. For over 40 years, I've observed entrepreneurs, investors, entire families. Some became richer than they ever imagined. Others lost everything in a matter of months. And almost always, before bankruptcy, something was happening. The same phrase was starting to repeat itself. The same feeling began to grow. The same spiritual pattern, forgotten for 3,000 years, was beginning to operate silently. In the ancient Hebrew language, this has a name, a code that appears in the Torah as a warning. A decline that begins long before the money disappears. If you ignore this warning, you may not only lose money, you may lose your clarity, your purpose, your self-respect, and the blessing that was written for your home. But if you recognize this sign, if you awaken while there is still time, you can transform an imminent fall into a sacred leap. You can avoid bankruptcy, break a decree of scarcity, and make room for a phase of growth so strong that even the pain of the past will become a testament to it. What I'm going to reveal today isn't coaching, it's not cheap motivation, it is a spiritual warning encoded in ancient verses, tested in the real lives of ordinary men and women, and also billionaires. And if you stick with me until the end of this video, I'm not only going to show you what that hidden sign is that appears before bankruptcy, I'll give you one, 30-day challenge. A concrete spiritual practice that can change the course of your financial life, even if today you are in debt, tired, and afraid of the future. Now listen to me carefully. Some who hear this will feel exposed. Others will feel relief, as if someone has finally put into words what you already felt but didn't know how to explain. The question is, will you have the courage to look at this warning before it's too late? Let me ask you something directly. When you think about money, debt, bills coming due, what fear weighs most heavily on your chest? Is it the fear of not being able to pay the rent? Is it the fear of disappointing those who trust you? Or is it the silent fear of looking in the mirror and feeling that you have failed the very destiny that God had prepared for you? If you feel that there is something deeper behind your financial life, something spiritual, energetic, sacred, then you are in the right place. Subscribe to the channel now. Join this community of seekers, of spiritual warriors, and walk with me on this ancient path of wisdom, pure wealth, and divine protection. We're not just here to make money. We're here to learn, to deserve the blessing. In the ancient scrolls, there was a man named Korah. He was not poor. On the contrary, the wise say that he was one of the richest men in all the people. Gold, silver, prestige, influence. In the eyes of the world, he was the epitome of success. But in the Torah, something begins to change silently. Before his downfall, before his spiritual bankruptcy, a warning emerges. Not like a voice from heaven, not like an angel appearing in a dream. Yes, like a change within the heart. In Hebrew, there is a profound expression, gavalev, a heart that rises, that swells. When a man's heart swells with pride, it's as if he begins to feel lighter and easier to be carried away by the wind of his downfall. The wise men explain that man's downfall begins when he believes that his strength and intelligence are the sole source of his wealth. The Torah says, "You will say in your heart, 'My power and the strength of my hand have brought me this wealth.' And then comes the warning, 'Remember that it is the Eternal One who gives you the strength to acquire wealth.' The warning is not a lightning bolt in the sky. The warning is a silent phrase that begins to repeat itself within you. I don't need to listen anymore. I already know. That doesn't apply to me." When that phrase appears, the heavens tremble, because humans are saying without realizing it, "I want to walk alone." And whoever walks alone, it also falls apart on its own. Now let's get into the central revelation divided into 4 layers. The principle of the Torah, the perspective of Kabbalah, the hidden meaning of the warning, and the practical spiritual step to break this cycle. Before bankruptcy at the bank, there is bankruptcy at heart. The Torah teaches that every material downfall is preceded by a downfall of consciousness. First, man replaces gratitude with complaining. Then, he trades humility for comparison. Ultimately, he exchanges his trust in God for despair or arrogance. This is the real financial report from heaven. You can have millions in your account and, in the eyes of the Torah, already be bankrupt. How? When your money no longer serves as an instrument of blessing, but as proof of superiority. When you treat people like things. When you start violating small principles because now you can. The spiritual warning comes in the form of inner unease. Nothing satisfies. You win, but you don't rest. Purchase, but don't fill out. He's achieved it, but he's still afraid of losing everything. This is the first doorbell from heaven telling you, you're confusing the source with the consequence. You are moving away from the root of blessing. In Kabbalah, bankruptcy is not just a lack of money, it is a light short circuit. All the money that comes to us is accompanied by a certain spiritual light, the energy of opportunity, responsibility, and the possibility of doing good. When a person receives too much light, too much money, too much power, without the inner vessel being prepared, something happens. The light that should illuminate begins to burn. Kabbalists call this or she'ena metzumtzem, a light that wasn't channeled properly. Before external failure occurs, a person's energy begins to become distorted. She goes into cycles of impulsive decisions, unethical business partnerships based solely on greed, disregard for minor internal warnings. This is the moment when the spiritual warning appears stronger. Strange encounters where wise people warn you, feelings of this isn't right, which you ignore. Dreams, intuitions, recurring signs. And yet the ego says, relax, it'll be all right. You know what you're doing. A Kabbalah encina. When you ignore 3 warnings, the 4th warning no longer comes as a whisper. It comes as a loss. Spiritual warnings before bankruptcy often appear in 3 voices. The voice of conscience, that feeling of tightness in your stomach when you accept an unfair deal, when you lie, when you step on someone for profit. You know you're not aligned, but you continue. The voice of circumstances. Small problems begin to pop up. Business deals suddenly freeze. Customers are disappearing in strange ways. Promising projects crumble without logical explanation. These are educational warnings from heaven. Recalibrate your path. The voice of the people. Someone asks you an uncomfortable question. Do you really think that's right? Aren't you working too hard? Aren't you distancing yourself from the people who love you? Almost always before bankruptcy, these 3 voices appeared. But the ego viewed them as irritation, not as a warning. What is the antidote? How can you stop this process before it explodes in your financial life? The first step is to recognize, say it quietly, right now, wherever you are. Perhaps the bankruptcy isn't just in the bank. Perhaps it's starting in my heart, and I choose to heed the warning. In the Torah tradition, true wealth is always linked to covenant. Covenant of integrity, covenant of generosity, covenant of dependence on God. A powerful exercise is this. Grab a sheet of paper, write at the top, my pact with spiritual wealth. List 3 commitments you make before God. A concrete way to be more honest. A concrete way to be more generous. A concrete way to set healthy boundaries for your ego. This simple act breaks decrees. Because heaven responds when the human heart inclines once more toward humility. Now, listen to 3 stories. A man, a woman, a family. 3 destinies that heeded the spiritual warning before disaster struck. Or after. The man who almost lost everything. Raphael owned a chain of stores. Imported car, trips, photos in luxury hotels. On the surface, a winner. Inside, a prisoner. He started out honest and hard-working, but over time small concessions emerged. I'll sort out that tax later. I'll put more pressure on this supplier, but he can handle it. I take advantage of this employee a little, he needs the job. One day, an older accountant called him aside and said, "You are making too much money in ways that do not bless your soul." That was the first warning. He ignored it. Months later, problems began to arise. Lost merchandise, lawsuits, important clients abandoning him. He called it bad luck. In fact, it was the second warning. Finally, his wife, with tears in her eyes, said, "I don't recognize you anymore. You've become hard, cold. Our son is afraid to talk to you." That was the third warning. This time he couldn't ignore it. In desperation, he visited an elderly rabbi known for advising businessmen. There, he heard a phrase that broke him inside. You want God to entrust you with great riches, but you are treating your children, employees, customers, family, like disposable currency. Raphael decided to heed the warning. It started to settle debts, renegotiate unfair contracts, to ask forgiveness from those he had hurt. Financially, he almost went bankrupt in that correction process. But something strange happened. After the agreement, new doors opened. Ethical partnerships, solid business, peace at home. Today, he says, I almost lost everything because I almost lost my soul first. The spiritual warning saved me from final ruin. The woman who turned debt into a mission. Carolina was independent and full of dreams, but she was carrying a suffocating debt. Maxed out credit cards, loans, and the shame of answering phone calls. She called herself spiritual, but in practice her decisions stemmed from fear. I bought it because I deserve it. I took out a loan because I couldn't wait. Always running after something, always tired. One night, unable to sleep, she picked up her cell phone and stumbled upon a video about spiritual warning before bankruptcy. The words seemed to pierce through the screen straight into her chest. She realized something painful. I'm not just bankrupt at the bank, I'm bankrupt in discipline, in truth with myself, in my trust in God. That was the voice of conscience. First warning. She started tracking expenses, cutting out unnecessary spending, and organizing her debts. But more importantly, a simple practice began. For every penny that came in, no matter how small, she set aside a percentage for an act of kindness, a donation, a concrete act of help. The numbers didn't change overnight. Mass spiritual energy. It changed. In less than a year, Carolina not only got out of debt, but also became a kind of mentor for other indebted women. She turned shame into a mission. Today, she says, my biggest failure was thinking that I needed to consume in order to exist. When I heard the warning and changed inside, the outside started to follow suit. The family that was almost crushed by an inheritance. A family received a large, unexpected inheritance. Home, cars, applications. It seemed like a blessing. In a short time, it became a poison. The brothers started fighting. Processes, screams, divisions. Money became an idol, a cruel judge that determined who was worth more within one's own home. One of the uncles, the quietest one, suggested, what if we set aside a portion of this inheritance for something sacred, to help someone, to build something that honors the person who left us this money? They almost laughed at him, but the war was so arduous that out of exhaustion, they accepted. They donated a portion to education projects in an underprivileged community. It wasn't a huge amount compared to the total, but spiritually, it was gigantic. Gradually, the family atmosphere changed. Money is no longer just mine against yours, and also became 1 hour in service of something greater. Today, they say that the inheritance was not their salvation. What saved them was listen to the warning that the money was destroying the bond, and to react with an act of reparation. But I don't understand Hebrew or Torah. How can this help me? You don't need to speak Hebrew to hear the voice of heaven. Hebrew is the original language of codes, but the Eternal speaks the language of your heart. What I bring here is not for scholars, it's for human beings. Spiritual principles work for those who are willing to change, not for those who know more fancy words. What if I'm already bankrupt? Is it too late? In the logic of banks, that might be true. In the logic of heaven, it's never too late to rewrite history. Sometimes, material ruin is precisely the final cry of a spiritual warning. You can't continue living the same way anymore. If you use this pain as an altar, a place of decision, of a new pact, of profound humility, then bankruptcy will not be your end, it will be your new beginning. I'm not a very spiritual person. What if I can't maintain this? True spirituality is not about living in a temple or wearing specific clothing. It's the way you treat it. The money people, and to himself when nobody is looking. You don't need to become perfect overnight. You just need to give one sincere step towards the truth. The sky doesn't demand flawlessness. Heaven responds to the honesty of the heart. Now, let me give you a deeper key. In Kabbalah, speaking itratzen, time for a favor, and in it din, trial time. There are windows through which the sky observes us more attentively. Turning point moments, job change, major investment decisions, marriages, separations, abrupt changes in lifestyle. At these times, the divine clock accelerates the harvest of our choices. If you enter a cycle of arrogance, injustice, disorganization, and greed at exactly one point, trial time, the fall becomes faster and harder. Therefore, the wisdom of the Billionaire Rabbi is not just about how to earn more, but when on this to move. Level 2 practice. Before any major financial decision, loan, partner, large investment, moving to another city for money, stop for 24 hours. During this period, avoid talking about the business. Avoid selling the idea to everyone. Instead, write, what principles might I be violating here? Who could be harmed by this decision? Am I doing this for purpose or out of ego and fear? This simple sacred break has saved more fortunes than any financial consultancy, because it takes you out of the impulse and puts you in the frequency of wisdom. Now, your commitment. You've heard it this far. This means that something within you is ready. For 30 days, take on this challenge. A daily 3-minute self-examination. Before going to sleep, ask yourself, at what point today did I feel that I betrayed my truth? At what point did I let fear or greed control my financial decisions? Write one line every day. One act of practical integrity a day. Something small, but real. Returning incorrect change, regularize something you've been putting off. To pay someone you owed, fulfill an old promise. A dose of intentional generosity each week. It doesn't need to be big, but it needs to be done consciously. I am using my money as a channel for enlightenment, not just as a mechanism for consumption. At the end of 30 days, observe your relationship with money, your anxiety, the quality of your relationships. You will realize that true wealth has begun to move from within. And when that happens, the material world is forced to align itself. Now, if you can, close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. Feel your story, your pain, your fears of failing, of not being able to cope. I want to release an ancient blessing upon you, not from a bank, not from a government, but from the God who sees your hidden tears and knows every debt, every burden, every sleepless night. May the Eternal grant you the courage to heed the warnings before they become disasters. May He give you a humble enough heart to correct your course, and strong enough not to be ashamed to start over. May every written bankruptcy against your life, bankruptcy of money, bankruptcy of love, bankruptcy of hope, be transformed into a school on the bridge in testimony of restoration. May the light of ancient wisdom permeate your dealings, your decisions, and your conversations. May you be protected from toxic partnerships, deceptive proposals, and shortcuts that smell of success but hide ruin. May the abundance that comes to you be pure. No bloodshed, no lies, no cheating. And as you grow up, never forget, true wealth is not what you accumulate. It is what you become in the eyes of God and men. May there be peace at your table, clarity in your mind, steadfastness in His steps, and a new story written about their finances, with lines of mercy, purpose, and honor. About you, about your home, about those you love, I declare protection, provision, and peace that surpasses understanding. Go ahead. Heaven is giving you a new beginning. Shalom.